Welcome to our Family Church of San Diego, which is part of Family Federation for World Peace. And today I wanted to share, this week is the 12th anniversary of the Ascension of Reverend Moon. And we, since Jesus ascended 2,000 years ago, we don't believe people die. We believe people ascend, right? This is really important. The Ascension of Reverend Myung Moon. I'm Reverend Walter Frank, pastor of Family Church of San Diego, and our group is called Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. Why? Because Jesus is the Prince of Peace of the whole world. Yeah. Not just one country, or not just one family, or not just one group. And this doesn't mean the family, doesn't mean one nuclear family. It means the family of God on earth. All those thousands of billions of people that God created. So that's our goal. And this is just my identity. Kids. I love kids and children and grandkids. This to me is the value of life. And by the way, I think this is the most significant aspect of Reverend Moon's effect on my life, is all these little kids that I love with my whole heart and soul. So this is Unification Church Faithful gathered in South Korea to mourn Reverend Moon. This is 12 years ago, right? It's the Ascension ceremony. I went. I know Andy went. Sadell went. Alan went. Many of us went. Because we respect this man for changing our lives, for showing us light. And for me in particular, I read Genesis many times as a young man, and that made me believe that there is a God. But Jesus is the one who made me believe that God is love. Without Jesus, I would just think, well, there's a God, good, bad, I don't know. But Jesus made me understand that God is love and eternal love. Reverend Moon helped make me believe that it's possible to create love on earth. And I think that's significant to me, right? This is from Luke 24. This is from Luke. Behold, I send the promise of my Father upon you, but tarry in the city of Jerusalem until you are imbued with the power from on high. And then he led them out as far as Bethany, and he lifted up his hands and blessed them. Now it came to pass while he blessed them that he was parted from them and carried up into heaven. And they worshipped him and returned to Jerusalem with great joy, and were continually in the temple praising and blessing God. So what this means is Jesus didn't die like people thought in the old days they would die and buried and you would wear black clothes. No, they were joyful because it was the first ascension of a human being into heaven. And we know from then he went, preached to people in hell, preached to people in prisons, and brought many, many people with him. So that's why we appreciate this as an ascension ceremony, not a burial or a death or the end of life. It's only the beginning of life. And to begin with Reverend Moon's life, this is from a book about early Christianity in Korea. Seoul, South Korea, on January 14, 1907, a group of Korean Christians and Western missionaries met in Pyongyang, North Korea, for a Bible study in a church on the outskirts of the city. Halfway through, God began to move. They knew that the only way to survive was to depend on God. Reverend Ji Il-bang of North Korean church said, one by one the men confessed their sins to each other. Sins of racial prejudice, hate, anger, and jealousy. By the way, Korea had fought many wars, and in 1905 Japan had annexed Korea and said, you're no longer Koreans, you're Japanese now. So when it says racial prejudice, they had been fighting Chinese, they had been fighting Japanese, they had been fighting and fighting and finally were defeated. Koreans were defeated, and so here they are in 1907 thinking, what do we do? The only thing we can do is pray to God to be able to survive. Sins of racial prejudice, hate, anger, and jealousy. Bang said they knew that nothing was impossible with God, so they called on him for forgiveness. God answered, and revival broke out. In the ensuing months, thousands repented publicly, including the elders of churches and 4 missionaries serving Korea. And out of that, they say, they think came the work of the Spirit that finally broke out as Pentecost. Professor Samuel H. Moffat, son of a missionary to Korea, said, thus began the great Pyongyang revival in 1907 that lasted for over 40 years. The North Korean capital Pyongyang, known in the 40s as the Jerusalem of the East because of its incredible Christian revival. And Korea became the most Christian nation on earth. And by the way, still remains so. Right? This is Kurt Koch's preface to Victory Through Persecution. The Korean church has set a pattern of perennial means always. Eternal revival, to which the church universal, means all the other Christian churches look at Korea with wonder and amazement. When I visited Korea years ago, I was astounded to find Christians getting up 2 hours before daylight and gathering in their churches for prayer, Bible study, and testimony. The scenes I witnessed there have stayed with me through the years and have had a great impact on my personal spiritual life. It is refreshing to know that the spirit of revival still prevails in Korea and that the work of God there continues unabated. At the alarming rate of spiritual decline in the West, it is conceivable that God is getting Koreans ready to serve as missionaries to the Western Church. The zenith of church-going Christians in America was 1954. Since then, it's been in decline, unfortunately, right? So that's what, and this, by the way, this is Billy Graham expressing his time there. For years, the flow of missionaries was from west to east, but it's possible that in the providence of God, that may be reversed in the future. In any event, the Korean church serves as a beacon of spiritual life in a sea of darkness, right? Most people don't know that. Most people don't understand that. Most people in America think America is a kingdom of Christians. Italians think, no, it's Italy is the kingdom of is the greatest Christian kingdom, etc., etc. But it's not. It's Korea right now. By Billy Graham, by the way. And this is 72. That's 50 years after the beginning of the revival in Pyongyang. So, based on this condition of Christianity revival, Reverend Moon was born on January 6, 1920 by the lunar calendar, February 25th, 1920 by the solar calendar. He was born as Yang Myung, one of 13 children, to Kyung Yo Moon and Kyung Gae Kim in Sangsa-ri village in Pyongan province, now part of North Korea. His family had been wealthy, educated farmers, but had fallen in hard times. Japan had annexed the country in 1910, and Moon elders participated in independence efforts. 1930, they joined the Presbyterian Church with his family and became increasingly devout. While mourning the death of two siblings, he perceived that God was grieving parent of lost mankind. Actually, he said in that particular year, he lost 5 of his brothers and sisters. They all died of diseases or different problems, and that made him go into the mountains to pray to God, right? We say that Reverend Moon rose from the obscurity of a Stone Age Korean village, born in 1920, to affect the course of human history on earth because God chose him. Right? The book of Romans says God chooses whom he chooses. Americans think if God chooses somebody, he should be white, or he should be an American. How could he choose a Korean person? But God chooses whom he chooses. That's how it works. Sorry. He says this, in 1920, when I was born, Korea was under the forced occupation of Japan. Even after liberation, there came the Korean War, the Asian financial crisis, and other numerous difficult crises. For many years, the land of Korea has not been closely associated with peace. But these times of suffering and confusion were not matters related only to Korea. The 2 world wars, the Vietnam War, the wars in the Middle East show that people in the world continuously treat each other with enmity, point guns at each other, bomb each other. Perhaps for people who experience these horrors of bloodied bodies and broken bones, peace has been something that could be imagined only in a dream. Peace, though, is not so difficult to accomplish. To begin with, we can find peace in the air we breathe and the natural environment and the people around us. So Reverend Moon says, how do you find peace? Is in God's kingdom. It is in God's kingdom. It is in the natural world God created. He says, as a child, I thought of the meadows as my home. As soon as I could wolf down my bowl of rice for breakfast, I would run out of the house and spend the entire day in the hills and streams. I could spend the day wandering about the forest with all the different birds and animals, eating herbs and wild berries, and I would never feel hungry. Even as a child, I knew that my mind and body were at ease any time I went into the forest. I would often fall asleep in the hills after playing there. My father would be forced to come find me. When I heard my father shouting in the distance, Yang Myung, Yang Myung, I couldn't help but smile, even as I slept. My name as a child was Yang Myung. The sound of his voice would awaken me, but I would pretend to be asleep. He would hoist me onto his back and carry me home. That feeling I had as he carried me down the hill, feeling completely secure and able to let my heart be completely at ease, that was peace. That is how I learned about peace, while being carried on my father's back. The reason I loved the forest was also because all the peace in the world dwells there. Life forms in the forest do not fight with each other. So he's saying that's how he experienced God's heart, that God is a parent. And when you allow God to carry you on his shoulders, then that's where you find real peace. That's what the world needs, is peace. He says, based on his life, I have dedicated my life to building bridges of peace between countries that hate each other as enemies because of the ideology and religion. I created forums where Islam, Christianity, and Judaism could come together. I worked to reconcile the views of the United States and the Soviet Union when they were at odds with each other over Iraq. I have helped in the process of bringing reconciliation between North and South Korea. I did not do these things for money or fame. From the time I was old enough to know what was going on in the world, there has been only one objective for my life, that is for the world to live in peace as one. I never wanted anything else. It has not been easy to live day and night for the purpose of peace, but that is the work that makes me most happy. So I appreciate that about Reverend Moon, because I feel the same. I feel the same. 1935, April 17th, after praying near Mount Myodo, he said Jesus Christ appeared to him on Easter morning and asked him to take on a special mission on earth having to do with heaven's work. Overwhelmed, the 15-year-old initially declined, but eventually pledged to do so at the cost of his life. For the next 9 years, searched for answers to the intense prayer, fasting, and Bible studies. They say the people who knew him said he would wear Bibles out, studying them. And when you hear divine principle from us, you hear Bible, that you see things in the Bible that you didn't know were there, right? They're in the Bible. We show you the Bible verse, but many people say, I never knew that. I never saw that before. It comes from this intense 9-year study that he could see God's hand in the Bible, right? So, 1 Corinthians 15:45, and so is written, the first man became Adam, a living being. The last Adam, Jesus Christ, became a living spirit. And Jesus calls people. As Jesus needs people, Jesus calls people. He might have called you. You might be one of the people he's called. He called me, that's for sure. I don't do this for a paycheck, that's for sure, right? What was I going to say? But the retirement program is out of this world. That's what the retirement program. So this is where he went to school in Japan. By the way, in March in 1940, he traveled to Tokyo to attend the technical school of Waseda University. Became involved with Korean independence activities, even though this meant arrests and beatings by Japanese police. After graduation, booked passage to Korea on the Kanran-Maru ferry. And that's 1943. It's still World War II. However, felt strange leadenness in his feet and strong premonition not to board the ferry, and went instead on a trip with his friends. Unfortunately, the Kanran-Maru was sunk by a U.S. submarine with more than 500 people on board. So he was that close, right? And his expression is, I understand death and war. I understand these things. That's why I pray for peace, right? So his life as a prayer person is, to us who knew him and lived with him, is unmatched. We couldn't know, I don't know anybody who could pray like him, but that's him. 1944 October, arrested by Japanese police who demanded he reveal the names of his friends in Japan. When he refused, police officers tortured and beat him, even hanging him from the ceiling like a slab of meat in a butcher shop. 1915, Japan surrendered, frees Korea, but the country was divided at the 38th parallel, with North Korea led by atheistic communists. So that was, he's been in prison, he said, at least 6 times. We'll talk about those a little bit, because that is his life. And during that time, during those 9 years after meeting Jesus, he began to understand the secrets of the fall of man, consummation of human history, the 3 families, and all these things that we teach now that we understand, right? 1946, acting on what he called God's demand, left behind his wife and son to find the people of God who are in the North. Remember, the North Koreans, that's the center of the Pentecost. And he went to find those kinds of people and unite them to do God's will on earth. Unfortunately, he was arrested by North Korean police for spying for South Korea, was held and beaten for months. Unfortunately, it's not true. He wasn't spying for South Korea. He was looking for God's people. But atheists and communists hate Christians. So that was the premise. October 31st, after a severe beating, tossed out of the prison into the snow and left for dead, nursed back to health by followers, Won Pil Kim, Mrs. Ock, some of them we know. We visited and talked to them. Resumed preaching in North Korea, but was viewed as a heretic and threat to Christians who themselves were suffering under communist harassment. I'm going to show you St. Paul's story in a few minutes. But St. Paul spent so much time in prison, being beaten, etc., etc. When God chooses someone, it's not always an easy course. It's not always easy. I'll show you those verses in a minute. 1948, February, once again arrested on complaints of disruption of the social order and sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. Entered Hungnam special labor camp where teams of men had to fill 700 bags a day with ammonium sulfate or be punished. Food was so scarce, prisoners would take rice out of the mouths of dead men. And this is a picture of those workers. It's not a specific picture of Reverend Moon. But we know he survived. We have eyewitness testimony of people who were with him in prison. Wampil Kim, who brought food to him. How did he survive? His mother, Wampil Kim, and other members of the church would bring food to him, and that was the only way he could be able to live. Right? June 25th, 1950, the Korean War began when some 75,000 soldiers from North Korean People's Army poured across the 38th parallel, the boundary between the Soviet-backed Democratic People's Republic of Korea to the north and the pro-Western Republic of Korea to the south. The Korean Peninsula remains divided today still, by the way. And this war was a horrific war, right? This is a civil war by North Korean communists who killed, murdered, destroyed farms, destroyed everything in their path, because unfortunately that's somehow the way of Marxism, to destroy. Fortunately, General MacArthur and the UN command to turn the tide of the battle in mid-September 1950, October. So I can't tell you the whole story of the Korean War, but MacArthur invaded Incheon. His soldiers cut off the North Korean troops and brought a kind of truce. But because of that, 1950, October 14th, released from Hungnam as guards fled advancing UN troops, walked more than 100 miles to Pyongyang to find his followers. So he did escape. He did escape because American soldiers had to escape the Chosin River problem by going through Hungnam. So this is unfortunately the sad part of Reverend Moon's life. Despite attempts against his family by Japanese police, he survived torture, imprisonment on several occasions. Despite the communist North Koreans torturing him and sending him to a communist extermination camp at Hungnam, he survived 2 years and 8 months. Despite imprisonment and false accusations in South Korea, he was exonerated. By the way, he was exonerated of all charges over and over again. Despite persecution from Korean government and people, despite expulsion from France, Germany, Spain, Taiwan, and many other countries, despite false imprisonment in the United States, and he will be exonerated. Despite all that, Reverend Moon devoted his life to the worship of God and teaching people to worship God. I think that's the significance of his life. To me, I worship God. My family worships God. We are blessed by God, the same as all of you in here. Why? Because he would never give up. Many people would give up, but he never gave up. And this is really important to me. People ask, well, considering all these things, Reverend Moon never hurt anyone ever. There's not a single report of him ever hurting people, hitting people, asking members to hurt other people. It never happened ever anywhere in the world. And we have tens of thousands of members. We've suffered persecution from every kind of group imaginable, including the United States government, but never hurt anybody. And while he was doing that, while he was suffering all these things, he was establishing churches in 185 countries, saving South Korea from the communist North by using his resources to establish the Washington Times newspaper that influenced the world to overcome the threat of Soviet communism, defeated communism in Afghanistan, Angola, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Grenada. Our members did so much to save these nations that was never recognized by the West or really appreciated by people. Back to 1950, October, released from Hungnam as guards fled advancing UN troops, walked more than 100 miles to Pyongyang to find his followers. In 1971, Reverend Wampil Kim and several members retraced part of Father's route from Pyongyang to Busan. Wampil Kim is one of the oldest members of her church, struggled with Reverend Moon day to day during the Hungnam time and after. He says, Father was released from Hungnam prison on October 14, 1950. His home village was only a 3-day walk from Pyongyang, and Father could easily have visited his family. Instead, he contacted all the members who had been with him before he was taken into prison. If he was unable to visit them personally, he at least sent someone on his behalf to meet with him. So his dedication to the membership of the church, like Christ, like Moses, absolute dedication to his people was true. This is from Reverend Won Pil Kim's biography. He says, Father brought with him a few things from prison, among them a small bag of rice. Of everything he could have brought, food was the most precious present, because food meant life. After 2 years and 8 months in prison, he was weak and malnourished. It took him 10 days to walk from Hungnam on the northeast coast of Korea to Pyongyang, near the west coast. During those 10 days, he could find no good food to eat. Remember, the North Korean army had gone through there and destroyed farms, killed people. He could find no good food to eat. Any crops left in the fields were old and spoiled. Then he ate those rotten leftover crops, saving the precious rice flour to share with the members in Pyongyang. I had been staying with a spiritualist who used to prepare food and send it to Father in prison. She came from a whole family of pious Christians, and she was the best member of Father's group. While awaiting his return, she lived with her mother, mother-in-law, and little daughter, attending their needs. So this is the Song of Liberation that we sang today. Song of Liberation. 7 days after leaving prison, Father wrote the words of one of our holy songs, set to the tune of a simple traditional Korean song. The words of the song express Father's strong determination and gratitude for God's goodness. When you listen to the words of this blessing of glory, you can understand Father's grateful heart. Right? This poem is a song which Father sang in front of God. If you were sent to prison for 2 years and 8 months, starving, being beaten, would you write a song to God? Not everybody does, believe me. Sometimes people get turned resentful to God. Why did you do that to me? I loved you so much, God. Why did you make me suffer so much? Reverend Moon's only idea was gratitude to God that he actually even survived that prison. And it's been many prison. That, to me, this is real faith. I've been at times when I was struggling and I pray to God, do you really love me? Reverend Moon understood God really loved him. He had that experience with Jesus Christ that never left him. He said, this poem is a song which Father sang in front of God. This song is not just for us, but Father wrote it for God. After the difficult circumstances in prison and throughout the dangers that confronted him during his escape, he was always thinking about God, expressing his faith in God and his undying gratitude to him. Father has an unchanging heart. His heart today is the same as his heart during the very difficult journey. As Chinese troops advanced in Pyongyang and began journey south with two followers, Won Pil Kim and Mr. Pak, one of whom had a broken leg and had to be carried or pushed on a bike, arrived in Busan refugee camp 2 months later, built the first Unification church out of stones, wood, and discarded U.S. Army ration cartons, began writing divine principle. This was his home and his first church. And believe me, people came to this church and joined, right? They came to this church and joined. And he began writing the divine principle with President Yu. You can see his writing. He would write his ideas. He would write his ideas down. By the way, the original divine principle, I had a chance to go to Korea and visit Father's own library. Yeah. It's written in Chinese characters. It's not even written in Korean characters. So it had to be translated from Chinese to Korean, which many Koreans understand Chinese as well as English, right? Many Japanese people can read Chinese characters as well. So anyway, that's what it was written in. If you ever wonder, it was Chinese. May 1st, 1954. So now this is 2 years later. Father's escaped to Hungnam, founded the Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity. The goal was that all Christians would unite. If all Christians would unite, they could overcome atheistic communism. They could overcome poverty. They can overcome all these things. The trouble is, how do you get Christians to unite? That's the difficulty. 1955, after months of denouncing Reverend Moon's church, Christian-led EY Women's University fires or expels 19 faculty and students who refused to leave the Unification Church. Other Christian-led universities urged President Syngman Rhee's administration to disband the church. So, unfortunately, right, for example, we teach the fall of man, right? The fall of man, we give a clear understanding that nobody else in the world has ever understood. And people didn't like that. If you understand the fall of man, why does Lucifer hate Adam and Eve? Why does he rebel against God? What's his problem? Jealousy. Jealousy. Simple jealousy. When you're a professor at EY Women's University and you believe you know the Bible better than else, and somebody comes who just escaped from prison and says, my understanding of the Bible looks like this, and 19 of your faculty and your students say, yes, that's more clearly understanding the Bible than anything the professors here say, what do the professors think? Nothing but jealousy. It's nothing but jealousy. They think, no, we're the professors, we're the seminarians, we know everything, you don't know anything. See, that's a big problem. Just exactly the same time as Jesus, or any of them, right? So this is our first church. After this, sorry you can't read this, but this says in Korean and Chinese and English, Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity. Sorry you can't read it. He says this is the beginning of divine principle. Whenever God made a new species of creation, he saw that it was good. This indicates that God wanted all his creation to be good objects. This is because he wanted to feel happiness whenever he looked at his creation. What then should his creation be like in order to make God happiest? After having created the universe, God finally created man in his image and after the pattern of his own character, with tremendous potential. Man was intended to enjoy and appreciate his position as an object of God. Therefore, when God created Adam and Eve, he gave them the three great blessings: to be fruitful, to multiply, and fill the earth, and to subdue it and have dominion. Had man followed the words of this blessing and become happy in the heavenly kingdom of God, God also would have felt much happiness. And this is also the secret of God's heart. If your parents and your children rebel against you and resent you and hate you or ignore you, can you feel happy? If this is the purpose of God's creation, and human beings rebel against God, unite with Satan, hate God, forget God, ignore God, take everything God's creation has made for granted, can God feel happy? That's also why Christians and other people said, no, this can't be the truth. You can't tell us that God is unhappy. God must be perfect in heaven with angels singing and dancing. God has a broken heart. And that's the truth of the Bible, and that's the truth. That's why Jesus cried in Gethsemane. Anyhow, this is the early pictures of Reverend Moon. He was a young man one time, preaching, praying. Unfortunately, July 4th, 1955, I think, arrested and held for avoiding military draft, found not guilty after 93 days. This is a Seuil-Dumont prison experience. Coincidentally, newspapers in Seoul suddenly began to print alarming stories about the Unification Church, sex orgies, and Reverend Moon being a North Korean agent. Reverend Moon was thrown in jail to be released weeks later when no charge could be found. Believe me, over and over again, he was put in prison. But no charges, there was no evidence. And you could Google President Yu. President Yu was in prison with him, and he laughed. What? Sex orgies here? Are you crazy? We're living as celibate monks. We're abstinent. Do you think we're preparing for man? Do you think we would live with Reverend Moon and he's having sex orgies and we're celibate monks praying and fasting all the time? He laughed at them. He laughed at the reporters. He laughed at these people. So Google President Yu. He was in jail with him. Again, the following year, he was thrown in jail on charge of evading the military draft, even though during the time in question he had been in Hungnam prison. After several months' confinement and sensational media coverage, the charges were dropped. But nobody ever said, no, it's okay. His release received scant notice in the press. Thus began the pattern of collusion between religious leaders, government, and the media that to this day suppresses Reverend Moon as a church. Still happens. In 1960, held a marriage blessing ceremony with 17-year-old Hak Jahan as true father and true mother. 5 days later, they blessed 3 more couples. This is important because we're the only ones who really understand the fall of man. And that this blessing ceremony is a reversal of the fall of man centered on God. Adam and Eve should have been blessed by God, but couldn't be. So Reverend Mrs. Moon on earth were blessed by God as a beautiful, perfect couple based on the foundation of Jesus Christ. And that's why we do the blessing ceremony. So this reverses the fall of man, and you can be in God's kingdom. 1960, original blessing, 1960. Here's some of the pictures. Right? Mrs. Moon, who's still alive, still preaching, still teaching, still loyal. Right? Father, Mother Moon in the beginning, Father, Mother Moon, having a big offering table, which we still do. Some colorized pictures of Reverend Mrs. Moon in Western garb and in Korean garb, because they want to unite the whole world, not just Koreans, right? And then they did many, many blessing ceremonies and began to bless the world, right? May 1961 gave the marriage blessing to 33 couples. Over the next decades and up to March 2012, the Moons held dozens of mass weddings many with tens of thousands of couples and even hundreds of thousands of couples who participate in the main ceremony via satellite. This is from Wikipedia, by the way. So this is even our words. This is from, that's why it says like that, the moons. Right? And so here's, that's President Kim and his wife, and blessing 36 couples. And I interrupted this because this is the timetable. 1962, the Little Angels Children's Folk Ballet of Korea is a South Korean traditional art and dance troupe made up of elementary and middle school children, founded in 1962 by Myung Moon and founded in the Unification Church to project a positive image of South Korea to the world, which they've done repeatedly, right? I love to hear the Little Angels or watch them. 1973, they performed at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. The group's dances are based on Korean legends and regional dances, and its costumes on traditional Korean styles. Choral singing by the troupe in many languages also featured, right? 1974, the Little Angels Art Education Center was completed. In 1975, Sunhwa Academy was founded by Bo Hee Pak, was named the first president. In 1976, Sunhwa Arts High School was accredited, and the following year, the school was renamed the Little Angels School at Sunhwa Art School, and Little Angels troupe became part of the school with broader artistic focus. From 1965 to 88, they performed over 2,000 shows in 40 countries, and until 2015, over 7,000 shows in 70 foreign countries. Right? We love those little girls. So the thing about Reverend Moon is he thinks art, if we use art and music, that will get people to understand more about God's nature. Remember in 2012, True Father sent the Little Angels Korean folk dance group all around the world to thank the U.S. Armed Forces and other 15 nation forces for their part in saving himself. So Korea and the world, and South Korea from the world from communist tyranny. True Father never forgot, right? He said, how did he escape Hungnam prison? Americans gave their lives so he could escape Hungnam prison. He never forgot. So this is the group. Here's Colonel Pak. Here's visiting all kinds of nations all over the world, all the 16 nations, including the United States of America, right? And they went there and sang, and there's generals, people who are still alive from that time. Here's Reverend Mrs. Moon and their family. And this is San Diego. They came to San Diego too. Here's illustrious John Robert Patrick Kinney. We went to arrange with the Camp Pendleton how to work this out. Here's Colonel Pak came and his wife, and Reverend Jung from LA, Pastor Frank. And here they are in San Diego. Here's Enyarts and different brothers and sisters amongst us, their San Diego group. So, and this is the Ascension ceremony. What Reverend Moon told Colonel Pak to do, when you go there, one of the things when all the soldiers are in the room, you have to say a prayer to let all the people who died during that war ascend into heaven, right? You have to do that, all right? So listen to this. So surely Jesus and true parents are raising an army in spirit world from the men who gave their lives to others. Listen to this. There's a reason why American soldiers all have a cross over their graves. When you think about that, isn't that very interesting? That all the soldiers from the Civil War, Revolutionary War, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War have crosses on them? Isn't that amazing? That's not a coincidence. That's not a coincidence. So this is one of my guests, Alvaro Provencio, retired Governor Sergeant, U.S. Marine Corps, exemplified. He wrote this letter to us after experiences of this event. He said, as a Marine and family member of 12 Marines, including 3 Korean combat veterans, one being my father, I was honored to see the appreciation bestowed on the United States of America from the Republic of Korea. I recall the time I spent at Pohang 1989-1990 with fond memory of the Korean people. It was wonderful to see the Little Angels representing their country and sharing their culture with us as an appreciation. Listen to this. I was touched when the announcer, that's Colonel Pak, ordered the Korean War vets that had passed away to come see this special event. My wife whispered to me that my father was watching from heaven. He says, I am very grateful that after 60 years, our true allies and friends in the Republic of Korea did not forget the sacrifice of our nation. That's Reverend Moon, right? He never forgets people who work hard or sacrifice. And I thought during this section, I just wanted to do the music. This is Universal Ballet. Universal Ballet was founded in 1984. The Universal Ballet Company is directed by Reverend Moon's daughter-in-law and prima ballerina, Mrs. Julia Moon. And I'd like to show you why. This is inauguration of Curao Ballet Academy in Washington, D.C. The artistic director, Mr. Vino Gradov, and true father, with all people involved in establishing this group. Do you recognize this? You recognize this lady? That's Caroline. That's our Caroline. She was there. Let's see. Okay, but this is why he made this group. He says, ballet is truly a heavenly art form. The dancers stretch themselves upward to the ultimate degree to reach God in heaven. Ballet uses the entire body as an instrument to express man's appreciation toward God. In this sense, is the ultimate expression of artistic beauty. That's what he sees, right? I'm sure when you see the ballet, some ballet somewhere, do you think, that's the ultimate expression of admiration to God? Do you see that? Wow. But that's what Reverend Moon sees, right? And that's why he made this ballet group, right? This is Hun Suk, Julia Park Moon. She's the leader of that particular group. Also, the other music programs that Father made, Unification, your Sunburst Band, which, of course, John Kenny is one of the lead guitarists of the age. So Father did a lot with music, right? A lot with art, music, because he thought that would bring people here. 1965 made his first visit to the United States and created 120 holy grounds as part of his first many world tours. Arrived in the United States and established World Mission Headquarters through the early 1970s, held many national speaking tours on Christianity in Crisis in 1971, Day of Hope tours. Right? Why Christianity in Crisis? Who is the first person we read about in this display that said Christianity is in crisis in the United States? Who was it? Billy Graham. Right? Billy Graham said in 1970 that Christianity is in decline in the West. What does Reverend Moon say? Yeah, Christianity is in decline. We have to uplift and recreate Christianity. So he did a 21-city tour. The results of the 21-city tour were remarkable. In New York, where 400 members worked a month prior to the Carnegie Hall opening, the movement attracted widespread media coverage. The September 22nd, 1973 New York Daily News carried a large photo and article on a Day of Hope rally on the steps of Federal Hall on Wall Street. Time, Newsweek, and Christianity Today all carry stories on the campaign, and Associated Press religion writer George W. Cornell's generally positive feature story appeared in 79 newspapers in the U.S. So it began very positive. God bless him. Who is this Christian guy from Korea? 250 prominent New Yorkers attended the inaugural Day of Hope banquet in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. Telegrams of congratulations were read from New York Mayor John V. Lindsay and columnist William F. Buckley, Jr., as well as from several U.S. congressmen. In Baltimore, Cardinal Sheehan sent his blessing to the banquet in Washington, D.C., where the movement also concentrated its efforts. Almost 400 citizens turned out for the banquet, more than 3,000 people for the 3 nights of talks. So this is Father during this 21-city tour, and if anyone could recognize Father's helper, Rosa Davies right there with True Father. When he would have important theological questions, I was just kidding. Also, he met President Nixon at this time. Everything was positive at this time because he's brand new and people didn't know what to expect. Unfortunately, so this is the rally on Wall Street. Held rally at Madison Square Garden, Manhattan, with 25,000 attending. Purchased Christian Brothers Seminary in Barrytown, New York, which became Unification Theological Seminary. How many people went to the seminary? Let's see, one person? You didn't go, Bill? Bob Millar went? Just only Bob Millar? Oh, and you, and Dickerson. Which became Unification Theology. In the next 2 years, purchased New York Hotel, Manhattan Center, Hammerstein Ballroom, Tiffany Building, Columbia Club in New York, and Belvedere Estate in Tarrytown. So September 5th could be a rebirth day, Reverend Sun Myung Moon. Go World Brass Band, also another musical group that he created with the Go World Brass Band. Let's see, then here's Alice Davies playing at a rally car. Do you recognize which one's Alan? I couldn't recognize. Which one? Is it this one? This one?
Saxophone.
Saxophone?
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry, I just couldn't make it out. I apologize.
I'll try to be clearer.
Be clear in the next photograph. Okay, and then this was the Wall Street program. Here it is. Thousands of members were there. This is Yankee Stadium. And this is Reverend Moon takes stage at Yankee Stadium. Yankee Stadium was a big battle between the left, between communists and us. Giant battle. And fortunately, we won. And by the way, here's Rosa Davies attending Yankee Stadium rally. Alan was playing with the Go World Brass Band somewhere. But we have many members attending this program, including Sidel Enyart. Sidel Enyart. Anybody else there? Anybody else there? Bob Millar, Robert Enyart. Held rally at Madison Square Garden, Manhattan, with 25,000 attending, and purchased a theological seminary. I believe this is a theological seminary, right? That many brothers and sisters attended. This is a Go World Brass Band practicing. There they are. It's not easy to find all these pictures, by the way. And here's a prophet for the salvation of America, Reverend Myung Moon, September 18th. Began van life. Remember living in a van? Now this is, unfortunately, great and terrible day of the Lord, so to speak. Because Washington, D.C. held rally at Washington Monument with 300,000 in attendance. Unfortunately, I wasn't there, but many brothers and sisters were, including Andy Weiss. Andy Weiss was driving this bus. Hard to recognize him with all that hair and all the rest of him. Didn't used to be there. But anyhow, he was driving Oakland Church. This is me driving the Brilliant Flower Happiness bus. They went from San Francisco Bay Area to Washington Monument to help bring people. Look at it. Father said this was great and bad. This tremendous effort by God to give God's word and God's message of Christianity in crisis, but it scared a lot of people in the U.S. government, right? So this is a celebration, and who's here? You recognize Alan Davies. Alan Davies supporting True Parents right there with his music. And September 18th held rally at Washington Monument with 300,000 in attendance. This frightened many politicians, Father said, and many ministers, because he said, here's what they thought. This Korean guy can bring a rally of 300,000 Americans in Washington, D.C. Who is he? He could win a political victory here. So I'm going to mention this. He was in October 44 arrested by Japanese police. Arrested in North Korea, went to Hungnam prison, Saedoman prison. Fraser's subcommittee accused of being an agent of the South Korean government. This is after the Washington Monument. Hearings held by Representative Donald Fraser, Minnesota Democrat. Although Mr. Fraser lost his bid for U.S. Senate in September, his commission issued a report recommending full government investigation of the Unification Church. Good and bad, right? You know what? Number one, the full investigation by the CIA found nothing wrong. We never did anything wrong. They said, we can't find anything, but we think they're still guilty, right? Investigation of the Unification Church found nothing. Reverend Moon is considered innocent. Next, unfortunately, they tried to get Reverend Moon on taxes. They did succeed. This is a testimony from Bohee Pak, the move to Danbury Prison. July 20, 1984, the day Reverend Moon was to enter federal prison in Danbury, Connecticut. Had to report him by 11 o'clock at night. Before departing from his home at the East Garden Estate on the banks of the Hudson River in upstate New York, Reverend Moon and his family enjoyed family dinner together. It was my good fortune to be included. His manner was the same as usual. His 12 children were there. From the grown-ups to those still in their infancy, Reverend Moon spoke as he caressed their heads. He said, I have to go away for a while. I want you to listen to what your mom says. Make sure you study hard at school. That way I'll be sure to bring some great presents when I get back. Isn't this what every father would say? That way, and by the way, here's a photograph here, right? Here's a photograph. That's that table, right? That's the one. And Caroline Betancourt was there in person. I think that's Matthew Morrison. Many of the people we know were there. McDivitt, of course. And then these are his children. Father, unfortunately, had to go to prison. I thought, I'm going to read this to you because nobody understands. Why does this take place? This is St. Paul, 11th Corinthians 22. Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they the seed of Abraham? So am I. Are they ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more, in labors more abundant, in stripes above measure, in prisons more frequently, in deaths often. From the Jews 5 times I received 40 stripes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I have been in journeys often, in perils of waters, in perils of robbers, in perils of my own countrymen, in perils of the Gentiles, in perils of the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren, in weariness and toil and sleeplessness often, in hunger and thirst, in fastings often, in cold and nakedness, besides the other things that comes up on me daily, my deep concern for all the churches. Who is weak and I am not weak? Who is made to stumble? I do not burn with indignation. Why St. Paul, who is called directly by Jesus Christ himself, have to go through all this suffering? Why Jesus himself? Is there one more peaceful person, more good, more loving person than Jesus? Why did he go to prison? So people always ask, and they ask, why does Reverend Moon have to go in prison? Doesn't that mean he must be guilty? No, it's the whole history of the church. It's the whole history of stoning and killing the prophets. But again, it's the same thing. When Reverend Moon can raise 300,000 people in Washington, D.C. on 40 days' notice, there's 40 days. 40 days from now, we're going to bring 300,000 people. And then he did it. What do the other ministers think? What do ministers think who have a congregation of 300 or 400 or 500? This Reverend Moon coming, preaching the word to us, we're Americans, we're American Christians. Why is he telling us what God thinks? It's nothing but jealousy over and over again. It's just jealousy over and over again. And that is the fall of man. Here's Reverend Moon in prison. Here's fall. I believe 100%. We live with Reverend Moon. We were in the same house with him. We ate dinner with Reverend Moon. We had breakfast. We drove him around. We did all kinds of things. We knew he never did anything bad. He was the nicest guy in the world. As I said, he's never hurt anybody ever. And by the way, there's no Unification Church police force, right? If you come late to church, there's no police force that punishes you or anything like that. We don't have anybody like that. We're just nice people. And then in spite of all this prison and torture and all these things, what does he bring? The marriage blessing, change of blood lineage from Satan to God to our original true parent, who is God himself. That's what we mean when we say family church, the family of God. We're now brought back to the family of God. Of course, 2075, we're all there. Many of us were there. 6,000 couple blessings, 30,000 blessing couple. How can you do 30,000 couples without God's hand on your life? We acknowledge Satan attacks Reverend Moon, but on the other hand, God supports Reverend Moon. How can you bless 30,000 couples at one time in a stadium in South Korea? Or do 30,000 couples, or what's the next one? 360,000 couples. There's tens of thousands of people who are married. I'm still married to my wife after 42 happy years, right? Many of us still married. Who could do that? God. Only God can help us. 3.6 million couple married, 36 couple marriages, world peace, marriage blessing ceremonies in every country in the world. Just over and over. What are we doing? Bringing peace and bringing true love to people. How could that be a bad thing? Marriage can't be a sin. The opposite of marriage is a sin. Also then, and even going to jail and doing all those things, he still did these things. Ocean sport fishing, a path to God and goodness. Reverend Moon is a lover of the ocean and an avid fisherman. He has found that the ocean is one of his best places for prayer, meditation, healthy exercise, and mental stimulation. So he began what he called Ocean Church, where people go to church on the ocean. Instead of going to church here, they would go fishing and do things like that. He loved the ocean. And he said this: we think by studying nature, you can understand more about God, right? Birds, bees, animals. He said, well, 70% of the earth is covered by ocean. If we're understanding God by nature, shouldn't you understand the ocean? That should tell you more about God than all the land. There's more of it than all the land. In fact, your body's made of about the same percentage of water, of ocean. You're an ocean creature. In the U.S., Reverend Moon began fishing for small fish in 73. Then in 76, he encouraged young people to get involved in the boat building industry. First in Alabama, later in Alaska. Anybody involved in the boat building industry here? Robert Enyart, Bob Millar, Sadell Enyart. Many of us, right? We did all these things with Reverend Moon. We accomplished all these things. Went from knowing nothing about boats to becoming shipbuilding people. In Alabama, later in Alaska, in 1980, pulled together an international team from about 30 nations to begin building 28-foot fiberglass boats. These young people learned together how to make a mold, lay sheets of fiberglass, and outfit boats with basic electronics, engine, compass, water pump, railing, etc. Then the same international group learned to navigate, fish, and handle boats in fair weather and foul. Isn't that true? We know many people. David Lowe, Ocean Church people. He was now a captain for big ships in the ocean. Oh, there's them fishing tournaments. And created Ocean Church. And of course, here's Bill Starr. One of the stars of Ocean Church, I might add. Let's see. 1980 created CAUSA International, which conducted hundreds of victory over communism conferences worldwide. CAUSA lecturers reached out to more than 250,000 leaders worldwide to overcome atheistic communism and save people from communism, right? Washington Post says, Moon's CAUSA, other people always call Reverend Moon, right? Takes aim at communism in Americas. An arm of the Reverend Myung Moon's Unification Church, a group called CAUSA, or Cause in Spanish, is pumping millions of dollars into an anti-communist organizing effort throughout the United States and much of Central and South America. Founded in New York in 1980, CAUSA has had a rocky time in Brazil, where only police intervention prevented mobs from destroying Unification churches in 9 cities, and in Honduras and in El Salvador, right? Only police saved us. Why? Because we're anti-communist. Communists are not nice people. They kill you if you're anti-communist. On the other hand, in Uruguay, Paraguay, Guatemala, and in 18 other nations, CAUSA literature says CAUSA operations were thriving to stop communism in Central and South America. Right? And listen to this. Launched the Washington Times in Washington, D.C. Washington Times is instrumental in overcoming the Soviet Union. Oh, by the way, here's a reception line at World Media Conference. Dr. Pak chastised me for shaking True Father's hand. You know what this reminds? This is Caroline, of course. She's there in all the big events, of course. Colonel Pak reminds me of those apostles when the people were bringing little kids to Jesus, and they said, "Hey, what are you bothering us for with all those little kids?" Jesus said, "Wait, let me shake Caroline's hand. Give me that hand right now. Let me shake your hand, right?" Let's see. This from the Wikipedia. The Washington Times was founded by Reverend Myung Moon in 1982. The Times notes that Moon will forever be tied to the fight to defeat communism, the cause to which he devoted much of his life's work. Speaking of the fall of the Soviet Union, he said, "I do not have the slightest doubt that God used the Washington Times to help bring an end to the most pernicious worldwide dictatorship in history and gave freedom to tens of millions of people." Isn't that an amazing life's work? What an incredible thing to do that time. The Times continued. As President Ronald Reagan often praised Reverend Moon's work, and that of the Times, which especially in the 1980s focused extensively on communism, his attempted expansion around the globe. You know, there's a book called The Black Book that says how many people were tortured to death by communists in China, Russia, Pol Pot in Cambodia, Venezuela, all over Cuba, all over the world, East Germany, West Germany, Poland. How many? They killed 100 million Christians. 100 million. You can't count that number. It's too big a number to even imagine. So Reverend Moon said he did this to save people from communism. Now listen to this one. Ronald Reagan, President of the United States of America. Bohi Pak, when Reagan's term was almost over, he invited me as the president of the publisher of Washington Times to the Oval Office in the White House. As can be seen in this picture, he firmly shook my hand in appreciation and said, "Dr. Pak, no one appreciates the value of the Washington Times more than I. Without the Washington Times, my Reagan doctrine would have been a failure. It could not have triumphed over the Brezhnev doctrine. Would you kindly convey my deep thanks and appreciation to Reverend Moon, the founder of the Washington Times, who made this most precious investment for freedom of tens of millions of people around the world?" Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? What a life's work. This is Poland. But look, many countries, right? The Washington Times was founded by Myung Moon in 1982. The Times notes that Moon will forever be tied to the fight to defeat communism, the cause of which he devoted much of his life's work. Speaking of the fall of the Soviet Union, he said, "I do not have the slightest doubt that God used the Washington Times to help bring an end to the most pernicious worldwide dictatorship in history and gave freedom to tens of millions of people. East Germany is now free. Poland is now free. Romania, Czechoslovakia, Georgia, Ukraine, and many, many, many more countries. Also, countries like India decided with the fall of the Soviet Union, they could unite with the West and become a democracy. Many countries decided, oh, the Democratic side is winning. We're not going to work with the Soviet Union anymore." So because of the Washington Times did this work, and many brothers and sisters worked for the Washington Times, suffered to make the Washington Times work, but all that is incorporated in God's salvation of tens of millions of people in the history of the world. Then following that, having saved Eastern Europe from the Soviet tyranny, Mrs. Moon went on to focus on worldwide women's advancement and freedom. 1992, the International Women's Federation for World Peace was founded. Mrs. Hak Ja Moon begins her own public activities for peace. 1992, Mrs. Hak Ja Moon, the devoted wife and mother of 14 children, began her own public activities for world peace, beginning with the World Speaking Tour. Her mission is both to lead peacemaking work and promote the central role of women in creating a just and peaceful society, right? Because we recognize women are equal partners with Adam, not a servant to Adam, but Adam is just a big loser without Eve, right? Men need women and women need men. It has to be equal. That's why when I always teach ACLC, I always teach the Samaritan woman at the well who's a preacher for Jesus. She preaches better than Peter or Paul or any. In Jesus' relationship to women preachers are good. With Martha and Mary, Mary decides she's going to sit down and listen to Jesus' teaching. There's many societies that say women should not get an education. But what did Jesus say about Mary, who came to get an education directly from the mouth of Jesus? This is good. You can do all your work some other time. Coming and listening and get an education from me is more important than doing all those other things. So, founding of the Women's Federation for World Peace is 2,000 years after Jesus' message of education women. And of course, Father doesn't do anything without Caroline Betancourt being there. Reporting on WFWB, Japanese American conferences, and artists that performed there at East Garden dining room, reporting to True Father what happened. And here she is again. WWP leaders meeting at East Garden, participating in a spiritual exercise. This Korean leader was demonstrating using me as a guinea pig. I was laughing from shock at what happened. I remember that guy. I remember those things. Yeah. Anyhow, enough with Caroline's adventure. 2003, Middle East Peace Initiative begins. 2001, 9/11 happened. A huge wars now began to brew between Iraq, USA, Egypt, Iran. All these wars began to be taking place. Father thought, how do we stop that? We need to dialogue between Muslims, Christians to stop that. Reverend Moon has dedicated himself to address the world's unsolvable challenges, achieving peace in the Middle East and peaceful reconciliation between North and South Korea. The Middle East Peace Initiative exemplifies his approach to peace by calling on leaders of all fields, including government, academia, religion, and the arts, to join into religious peace missions to the troubled spots of the world. So this is here, the Dome of the Rock's up here, and this is Christians, Muslims, Jews all uniting at the West Wall to pray for peace and sign peace treaties amongst all the religious groups, right? So many brothers and sisters were there. Andy was there. I was there. Who else was there? Who went?
The Women's Federation had 500 members at that.
We're going to show that one in a minute too. So we have many brothers and sisters who went. We have many ministers who went from San Diego. And here you can see tens of thousands of people coming to bring peace. People to pray for peace in the name of God, the one true God. Right? You can see this. This one was at the park. And you see people representing every major religion. Eastern Orthodox, Druids, all kinds of different people, Christians from America, from all over the world. Father brought them all together to say, look, we can live in a world peace centered on one heavenly God, right? And this is from San Diego. See, this is Reverend Mahadas went. Different brothers and sisters went. Let's see, I have some of the pictures. Suyapa went. Mrs. Frank was there. Let's see, here's other brothers and sisters. Rosa Davies again. And that's not?
Susie Gins.
Oh, Susie Gins. Oh, Susie Gins. You're right. Sorry. I apologize. And there is Siapa and different brothers and sisters from all over the world. We participated. Right? We participated in all these events True Father tried to accomplish. This is Solange. Solange. And here's Georgia Williams, one of our ministers. And here's the big park, and we're all in here together. This was crowning Jesus as the King of the Jews by a rabbi. Father said, if all the suffering to Jews suffered due to the crucifixion of Jesus, then why don't we crown Jesus King of the Jews in Israel at the center, as though we got a rabbi to do it, right? Now you might say, what's the result? There's still wars, right? But you know what? The wars used to be Egypt, Iraq, Syria, all warring against Israel. Now it's only